Hello and welcome to the No Gimmies podcast. We are 1 week away from the NBA season officially starting. Could not be more excited, especially here on this podcast. It is 10:15 on a Tuesday night here on the East Coast, and I am joined from a hotel room from a different location without his championship banners in the background. But it's my co-host Aaron Bullwinkle from an undisclosed location on the West Coast. Aaron, how you doing, buddy? How's your hotel room? How's
I,
life?
my hotel room's great. I've only been in here for all of about 15 minutes because I went on site for my work event. I'm in San Francisco for those out there, and I'm actually fortunate enough to be working at Chase Center. Nothing to do with basketball, but I will be staying here for a Warriors Clippers game. But I'm good. The hotel room's nice. The unfortunate thing, to your point, is this would seem the most appropriate time to have a banner behind me, and instead you get bad lighting and off angles. But whatever. This
and
is
hotel
commitment.
Wi-Fi, yeah,
And hotel
hotel
Wi-Fi, yeah.
hotel Wi-Fi, which is never
Yeah.
the best. But we would like to start the show the way that we always like to with the tip off, and that's giving a little bit of air to the WNBA. But I have a new thing that I want to start doing for the podcast, Aaron.
It's a new season. It's time
I'll
to
say
start.
I
Yeah.
haven't shared this with you. I didn't tell you I was going to do this. I want to start every podcast with a question for you, my friend. It is October. It is one of our greatest sports months. Other than the NBA starting, what is your favorite part about October sports? It could be
October sports.
in general.
October
There's a
sports.
lot to
I mean,
pick from.
it's got to be baseball playoffs.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, and it's interesting because my dad and I used to be super into baseball, very stat centric. Obviously, that's something and so I used to really, really get into this time of year. I don't so much anymore, but what's really nice is the games are always played at such a fever pitch and with such an amazing energy. I don't need to know all the storylines to still be able to appreciate the emotional intensity of the moment.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. That's a great answer. The MLB playoffs have been incredible this year, despite the fact that my Yankees got eliminated in the first round. That's completely their own doing. Um, you know, I look at this Mariners team. I look at this Brewers team. Two teams that I would love to see in the major in the World Series. I'm very excited to see how this plays out.
It's one of the things that is actually fun about baseball too is like there is no, I mean, outside of the A's at this point, there's no team that seems like they're so far from relevance that like 2 years from now they don't pop up in the World Series. The
Yeah,
Royals, all this random stuff. I do want to give your Yankees a little credit. They made it past the first round by vanquishing a very familiar foe. So they did take the Red Sox down before the Blue Jays came around and gave them some karmic retribution for some stuff that was said
yeah.
by some of the broadcast team about the Blue Jays. But still, you guys you pulled it together and at least gave it a good college try.
Was it enough to fire Aaron Boone? We will find out. But
Boone and
that is
Cashman are. I mean, you might as well just put statues of them out there now.
yeah. Well, uh, I don't want to talk about a team that lost. What I do want to talk about is a team that we are fans of that won. And that is your Las Vegas Aces, who just won their third championship in 4 years, establishing themselves as a dynasty, establishing themselves as one of the best WNBA teams of all time, and establishing Asia Wilson as with no other peer in this game. She is unequivocally and officially the greatest player in the WNBA history. I'm willing to put that on
Ooh,
the record and say that out loud because she is the greatest basketball player I've ever seen in the W. And that's saying something because there have been some amazing players who have played in the W. This is not recent history. This is not based on just what she's done in the last couple of seasons. This is based on an entire resume that if you put that out there in the world, you'd have a hard time arguing it's not the greatest resume that you've ever seen. And it's just her last 5 years. So yours, Las Vegas Aces, WNBA
first,
champions.
I'm
Please.
upset that I haven't seen the Luca episode of Hot Ones because I want to be able to curse in Slovenian because that was fucking spicy. And I'm good with it. Like the the reality is like I've been kind of, you know, saying my goat for a while because in all reality I felt like we were going to get here sooner rather than later anyways. And even though some people out there may feel it does a disservice to players, it just, you know, Diana Taurasi, um, um, pardon me, and to name very many others, you know, whoever you want to say if you're more Tina Thompson, you know, there's plenty of players that we can have in that conversation, but there's nobody that can put together a run like this over that period of time, like you said. And the individual accolades get to stand on their own kind of merit between being considered both the best, you know, maybe not best offensive player all the time, but the MVP, the most valuable, but also the best defensive player. So there's this holistic way in which she dominates the game of basketball that we just don't see in the sport in general, male or female. You know, even when Jordan was at his best, you can definitely make the argument that he was the best defensive player when he wanted to be, when he ratcheted up to that level because of what he had to give on both ends. Or even if you want to make the case that he has one defensive player of the year. And that's not to say anything about Michael Jordan's ability defensively. It's just, like you said, when you see this on paper, but also witness it in person, she has been a force of nature in the game of basketball. And it's the reason I switched and picked the Aces, even though feeling reluctant because of her and what she did.
There is no NBA equivalent to what the Las Vegas Aces did as a team this year. Unless you maybe want to go with the 22 Warriors, but like even then, they weren't this middling in the middle of the season the way that the Aces were, because you and I talked about this on many podcasts ago that the Aces looked lethargic, that they looked like this was the death rattle of their dynasty run, that it was over, like more or less that it was over for the Las Vegas Aces, and they were going to have to figure out some new path forward going into next season so that they could, you know, recommit to trying to challenge for a championship. And in the middle of the season, they have this remarkable, how many games was it? Was it 17?
They won 17 in a row in the regular season, night or yeah,
I
and
think
then what was
two,
it?
and then they
19
won
out of
against,
19 out of 20. Basically
yes.
from I think July 24th. Yeah.
There's no real like equivalent that I can think of in NBA terms for a run at that good at the end of the season, to not only go from like wondering if they were going to make the playoffs to the number 2 seed, but then to get from the number 2 seed to and sustain that success, sustain that momentum going forward, and make it to the WNBA finals, and then win in a sweep. There is
Yeah,
no equivalent that I can think of.
that's the thing that was really, we've had some teams before that felt, you know, either listless or disinterested in the regular season. I wanted to go back because I couldn't remember how many games that 96 Rockets team or whatever they won 40. I looked it up and then I forgot it that fast. They won 48 games. They won 47 in 95. Those were teams that at that time, they weren't dominant, but they didn't feel like this. I mean, the thing that happened here was, like you said, they felt like they were almost at a nadir, and it wasn't. Obviously, I talked about it ad nauseum. It wasn't just a reflection of poor play. It was a reflection of disinterested, disjointed, and at times just completely listless. And so, and not listless because they were not listless because they were bored, pardon me, but because something else was going on. And yeah, the run they went to close, that's an all-time run no matter what the circumstances leading up to it. But considering what prefaced it, that's incredible. And like you said, it's really wild because, okay, so the first round, the Storm take them down to Jackie Young ends up being the difference maker with a putback with 3 seconds left, basically, or the Aces are gone. The next round against the Fever, they go to overtime, and they're basically just like a Odyssey Sims away from maybe being a little bit more health or whatever the case may be, Kelsey Mitchell not going out. And then all of a sudden they face this Mercury team that came in looking like a house on fire and just boom. And it's unfortunate what happened to Satu Sabali in game 3, because I do think that the Mercury, this shouldn't have been a sweep. The Mercury are going to go down as one of those teams where it's a little unfortunate how this will be perceived considering what they came into this series as. But also, I mean, what the Aces did in the finals in terms of the lack of turnovers, the defensive intensity, the way that this team changed its complete approach to defense and that accountability thing. And we really talked about it. I left that Minnesota game right before that run because there was none of that. And by the time I had gone back when they were on this run, there was all of that. You could just tell that everybody kind of galvanized and got after it and really decided that this was going to be something. Now it'll be interesting with the offseason, like Jackie, Asia, these people that looked like maybe there could be suitors for them other places. You got to run it back. Like if you're this Aces team, you're on an all-time thing now, right? It's You and Houston have only had this type of success in a compressed amount of time. Houston doing it 4 in a row as the league first started. This isn't necessarily more impressive, but I might make a case for it.
I don't know. I think when you look at the depth of talent around the league, I don't think the league's ever been better than it is across, as far as like talent spread across the league. It's less centralized than I think that it used to be. And I think
it's so much more depth on each team.
I would agree with that. And then, I think in the next couple of years, you're going to see a dilution of talent with the new franchises that are coming in, and the talent's going to be spread a little thin. And I don't think you're going to see this kind of run happen for a good long while until the league is finally, kind of able to restock the cupboard, so to speak. Whenever they're able to have a little bit more depth of talent and they're able to kind of have a little bit more of a developmental process for all these new franchises that are coming in. I think this run is, I think it's special. Obviously, I think it's unique in the way that it's leading. I kind of want to equivocate this to like 1979 and kind of be like, this is the birth of the modern WNBA a little bit more. And I kind of want to see if the Aces have a rival that are going to run with them, that are going to kind of, where they can kind of do this back and forth, because I think that's the healthiest thing for the league. As much as we all say that we want parity across our sports leagues, what has really driven
rivalry
ratings, what has really driven rivalry is rivalries. I mean, what drives ratings is, the NBA, whenever they had the Cavaliers and the Warriors, for 4 straight years, everyone was like, oh my God, I'm so bored. I'm so tired of this. It was the best ratings that they'd had since I think the Kobe finals in like 2009, 2010. So like, it turns out that having something that's consistent, that people can identify with, that is actually what drives viewership. So I wonder which team that's going to sit there and rival the Aces. Maybe it's the Lynx. Maybe it's the Fever. Maybe it's a team that's on the rise. Maybe in a couple of years, it's the Dallas Wings. I don't really know. But I do know that like this is the team that's going to usher in the modern WNBA. I think this is going to be the team that you see the most jerseys at road contests. You're going to see the most Aces jerseys in the crowd. I think you're going to see A'ja Wilson jerseys for like the next 20 years in the league. People just showing up to WNBA games wearing that jersey. I think they're the standard bearer for what is going to be the next generation of WNBA basketball. And, I think Minnesota was that to kind of lead the league in. Maybe the Sparks probably had a good run at it for a while, but I think this is an Aces league through and through. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think that's a little tough just because of the way the growth is happening and how centralized fan bases become in the WNBA. I still don't think it's quite as driven as much. I mean, obviously we still identify with stars, but I think a lot of teams, and part of this being a reflection of the fact that like people, everything feels more collegial at the games. Everything feels more about the experience and the teams. I think that there's still a lot of everybody's going to be down with the teams that they're really associated with. That being said, this
Sure.
look, A'ja Wilson is uh, arguably the most popular player in the WNBA right now. She's definitely in the top two most notable, noteworthy, notable, identifiable at this point for a lot of reasons now, because there's obviously her success, her branding with Nike, the fact that she is now associated with another superstar. And that's not to diminish any of them individually. I'm just saying it puts you on a bigger platform in terms of the
Sure.
conversations being had around the player. Um, yeah, I think the other part that's tough about this is like everything feels what it feels like right now. This is going to be an off season with a lot of churn and change. And what that looks like, including with the Aces and an Aces team that's getting a little bit older. I wouldn't be surprised if next year we have another team that is, centered much like the Mercury just did, where we have three superstars somewhere and it kind of all starts to become more diffuse storylines again, with the Aces being the presumed favorite, but with it starting to feel like it's softened a little bit in terms of how
Sure.
we feel about them right now. Right now is amazing. Like, it's awesome. I'm not trying to diminish anything. This was the coolest title run of the three for me, just because it was so emotionally crazy. Obviously, I went on here, I had a whole rant about how I felt. I'd like to say I'm pretty sure I prefaced it with I hope I'm wrong. I was very wrong. Kudos to that team. Jewel Lloyd for being able to take the role that she was willing to take in that situation. Chelsea Gray showing that she still had something. When there was, even I hit a point where I was like, I think Chelsea's done. And I was holding out real long and like, I was wrong. Like, this has been an amazing, this is like the stuff that movies are made of, this
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's major league and they're taking off the patches of clothing as they go on this amazing run. It was wild.
Everybody loves an underdog story, even when it comes from such a rich, storied franchise like the Las
Yeah.
Vegas Aces. I'm just really happy for you, man. I'm happy for your championship run. I'm glad you get to add another banner to your wall. So the next time you and I record a podcast together, I hope that it's already in the mail and you have your championship banner and it's hanging up on the wall by the time you get back home.
I wish it was like that. I usually get it in the first or second. They usually give it to us the first game of the season when they hang the banner, so I
Oh,
won't have
cool.
it till then. I do also
Okay.
have to say, it's a little. I'm a little frustrated because this is now the third time I haven't been able to go to the Aces parade. I'm here for work. Before I had just had knee surgery, and prior to that point, I was also out of town for work. So this is they won the title on the road all three times. So I've been to the finals all three times, but I haven't seen them win there. Now this is obviously like the most first world problems ever from a fan
Yeah.
standpoint. But it is
Hey,
also one of those things where it's like I want to be a part of the celebration directly.
hey, Kathy, if you're
Yeah.
listening, you're a friend of the pod. We're not necessarily a friend of you, but do Aaron a solid. Hold on to the parade.
Yeah.
Mark Davis, if you're listening, also weird friend of the pod. Mark, just hold on. Let Aaron get home so he can be a part of the parade and actually see the championship celebration. All right. So we're using our podcast for good. We're trying to
All
help
right.
you out. All right. So that was the tip off. We always love to talk about the WNBA. I'm very glad for my friend Aaron for his championship run. But we want to get into the now that we already talked about the WNBA. We would like to talk about the actual NBA that is coming up. Uh, it is 1 week away from having our first game where Oklahoma City gets their championship banner, where Oklahoma City gets their rings. And I'm very excited for that. I'm thrilled. I have that blocked off in my schedule. I have no work that day. I just want to watch Oklahoma City play the Rockets. I'm very excited about it. So Aaron and I had a conversation about what we wanted to do as a show before the NBA season started. And I kind of pitched this idea for doing a 30 for 30. So 30 things that we are interested in for each team in the NBA going into the season. So this could be a player we're excited to watch. This could be some new like play changes that a coach implements to their offense based on new personnel. It could be a trade. It could be front office moves. It could be something about the fans. It doesn't matter. Aaron, I think kind of you said that you kind of put this in like terms of storylines.
I did it as storylines and I did it kind of like as biggest questions. But what's going to be fun about this is I might pull a few audibles now just because I'm like, oh, I might be more curious about this. So I don't know how I'm going to, like, I have a sense of all the things here, but.
Well, I love that. I think that's really fun. I love doing things on the fly as well. So here's how I decided that we were going to split it up. I'm going to give you the Western Conference, and I'm going to take the Eastern Conference. So we're going to alternate. I'll just give you a team at random, and I'll keep track of all this stuff. And I want, whenever I give you the team, you tell me the thing that you're most interested in, and we're going to try to do this rapid fire style. How's that sound?
Okay, so you'll say the team, then I'll say mine, then you'll say yours.
Then you'll give me a West Coast team, I'll give you an East Coast team, and we'll just go back and forth.
Do we want to touch on some of the stuff that's interesting?
Of course. But okay, I do want to keep it brief. Let's touch on it. But I mean, we got to cover 30 teams, and we'd like to keep it as brief as we can. So, we'll just do it as quickly as we can. Anyone who listens to this podcast regularly knows that Aaron and I are not brief. We love talking basketball.
Brevity like Chris Farley did that coat in Tommy Boy.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, actually. So I'm gonna start you off with one that I think is spicy, because I'm super interested to hear what you think about this, because you and I have had conversations about this team, and you are super negative about them with good reason. By the way, I'm not calling you a hater, but I want to see how you feel about this. So, Aaron, are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead. Sixers. What about them?
Nailed it. It is the Sixers. I do want to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers because I want you to say something about them, but I'm assuming it's not going to be pleasant.
Have you seen the fact that Joel Embiid is not playing? Paul George is hurt. Jared McCain is out. Like, it's the same thing. So for me, Philadelphia, forget health. What is the best version of this group? Like, what can they be with what they have? Like, what is the top version? And those guys are on the side, right? Like, I don't even want to think about Paul George and Joel Embiid. I'm curious to think, like, is VJ Edcombe going to be a top 3 rookie performer? That's the only thing that interests me with Philadelphia now. I don't really want to think about those guys anymore.
Yeah. So your answer to this question is, what is the best version? That is what you're interested in, like seeing what they're able to roll out onto the floor.
With what I expect, it's kind of nebulous because at some point we're going to see Paul George and Joel Embiid. But my point is, like, I actually want to see these guys playing basketball as kind of an interesting version without those guys, because that's just what I expected a year ago. So I'm interested to see what that looks like. What does it look like with Tyrese Maxey? What are they going to try to figure out with the guys that they do have? How do they go?
So I flirted with Tyrese Maxey being my answer and just being like him as the potential scoring champion, which we did not bring up when we talked about the awards that we talked about on the last episode about, we kind of like touched on scoring champ. And now with all their injuries and what they're left with, what does that look like with Tyrese Maxey being the focal point again for the offense? Can he stay healthy? And when he does, what does that look like? I also flirted a little bit with Quentin Grimes making like a generational run and making the 76ers regret not paying him and extending him a qualifying offer. Just because they're going to need him now that McCain's hurt, now that all the injuries you just mentioned. Like Quentin Grimes becoming more and more essential to this team that refused to pay him just a couple of weeks ago. So that's a fun one. But this is my number one thing with the Sixers. Now, knowing what I know, and we talked about this, I was much higher on the Sixers than you were. Now my thing about them is Nick Nurse the first coach that's going to be fired?
I mean, didn't I already predict
Yeah,
that?
no, you predicted it, but now I'm
Yeah.
like,
Oh, you're
but
just
now I'm
okay.
now I'm like, well, is there anybody? Okay, let's ask it this way: Is there anybody else in the league that you'd be like surprised if Nick Nurse outlasted them? Is there anybody else you think could be first fired over him
Any before Nick Nurse,
before
anybody
Nick
who's
Nurse? Because I can't think
uh
of another coach that's like,
I mean, yeah, like Doc has to have like job security at this point, right?
I mean, what else are they going to do?
Milwaukee, yeah, at some point. If Washington really just looked like a complete dumpster fire from a developmental standpoint, I could see Brian Keefe being in that conversation, but I don't think that's going to happen. Only because maybe people in Washington feel like they've identified somebody else, but I wouldn't. I'd expect that to happen in the offseason. So he's the only other
My,
person I can look at and think about, like maybe because most
my
other guys, I mean, most of these guys have just either are new or have been recent. Jamal Mosley's the only other one. If they looked just a hot mess
abysmal.
offensively, yeah, like, but if they'd have to look so bad versus what they're going to be that I just can't fathom that.
Yeah, my answer was Willie Green, but only because he's going to get scapegoated because of like New Orleans. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
We can talk about New Orleans down the road or down the
yeah.
line here. But that was my answer. Other than that, I
All right.
cannot think of another coach that's on a hotter seat than Nick Nurse.
Yeah, agreed. But at the same time, I mean, yeah,
He's been
we
given
can.
a bad deck for sure.
Yeah, we've talked about like if Daryl Morey is actually expecting so much of Nick Nurse, given the circumstances that Nick Nurse could get fired. Like the only way I see that happening is if he runs Tyrese Maxey or something into the ground again. But again,
Yeah.
it's Philadelphia, and the culture, the whole thing is whack. Next,
Yep. There you go.
we
All
talked
right.
about
You're
Philly enough.
up.
Yeah.
You're up. Give me
Um,
a team.
let's go to another interesting group. Is
I'm excited.
are the Suns going to be bad offensively? Like, are they gonna? Are we sure this is even going to be a like better than I don't know bottom 10 offense considering what they're rolling out there from their support guys?
So the Suns are an interesting one. I think the offense is going to absolutely crater without Devin Booker on the floor. I think Devin Booker's he's gonna have an offensive playbook that looks a lot like his first 5 years in Phoenix, and where he's just the only person that's able to actually generate his own shot and do things. Um, I mean, you look at the starting lineup, and it's Booker, it's Green, it's Dylan Brooks, it's from there. I don't know. Is it Grayson Allen and then uh,
No, you're probably looking at Royce O'Neal,
Royce O'Neal and
Dylan
Mark Williams?
Brooks, Jalen Green. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
like
I'm like,
that's what
who else is
and no,
generating their
and
own shot?
Mark Williams is hurt right now, so
Yeah.
you're
So
looking
then they're gonna go with Nick Richards.
Nick Richards. Yeah, like
Yeah, as
it
their starting
gets
center. It gets
and that's your
bleak.
start. Can I interest you in some Colin Gillespie off the bench? And look, Colin
Ryan
Gillespie's
Dunn.
yeah. This Osa Igudaro, like this is not. These are all interesting, like pieces of a functional defense in certain ways. Like not this
Like
defense.
it's bizarre to think that Dylan Brooks is such a linchpin for like what they do defensively. Because when he's off the floor, I think it's gonna look even worse than their offense looks when Devin Booker leaves the floor. I think Dylan Brooks is gonna be like have so much responsibility defensively because nobody else on that team can play defense.
Well, I like that.
Like Mark
Look,
Williams when he's healthy, maybe.
no, I mean he actually isn't very good defensively, which is part of the problem.
Yeah,
He's a
but
pretty good rim protector, but he doesn't rebound
rim
that well,
protector,
and
that's it. That's what I
he's
mean.
terrible rotationally.
Yeah.
But some of the bench guys like, or I mean, even let's start back with the starters. Royce O'Neal's a good defender. Ryan Dunn's going to be he's an excellent defender. Oso Iguodaro's a good defender. The problem
Yeah.
is these
Yeah.
guys are going to have to compensate for so many other bad defensive players on a team that's also going to be. I think this is going to be like a really bad offense. I don't think
I
enough
think
people are talking about like. I think they're going to be gross to watch some nights.
I was gonna say the most interesting thing about this team. This was gonna be my answer. was, does Matt Ishbia swallow the poison pill and trade Devin Booker? But it seemed so impossible to trade somebody who's making that much money on their extension in the middle of the season. So that's completely out of the book. So now my question is about this team. The most interesting thing about the Sixers, I'm sorry, about the Suns, does Matt Ishbia last much longer in the NBA? Every move, every decision he's made since he bought this team has blown up in his face. And that's not even including the personal and the organizational scandals that have happened behind the scenes.
I'm trying to think of the last time I can remember an owner kind of. I mean, because the new owner syndrome is rampant, right? Like it's as virulent as any disease that kind of befalls like somebody in that type of circumstances. Like everybody comes in thinking I was a titan of industry and something else. I can make this something else. I think Matt Ishbia is passionate enough, and I'm sure wealthy enough to absorb some of this and learn and grow from it. So it's too early for me to have that type of assessment. It also provides him some very nice coverage in terms of like what his decision making apparati are when the Mercury just did what they did, and he's also directly tethered to that association. They had the type of turnover that they had. Now, what's dangerous is, does that become a self reinforcing thing, right? Like the Mercury lost 70% of its scoring, they only returned 2 players. This Suns team has seemed to be very, very aggressive with roster churn under him. And I don't want him pointing to the WNBA franchise, but it's too early to really assess where Ishbia is at with that to me.
Yeah, but I'm not even just talking about whether or not he's like a good owner of a basketball team. He's being sued by one of his minority owners. He's being sued by employees alleging discrimination, like wrongful termination.
Okay.
He's being sued for like doing side deals with other investors. Like Matt Ishbia is not just like a bad sports owner in the sense that he's an egomaniac who thinks he knows best, which is the typical thing that most sports owners are. I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. David Tepper had one of the worst starts to running this organization before he finally learned to shut up, take a step back, and get out of the spotlight so much. Once he learned to stop doing like making a complete ass of himself, the team actually started making some progress forward, and people are like cooling on hating David Tepper, telling him to sell the team, to get out of Charlotte. Things have cooled. He's not doing that. He has never stopped talking, and he's being sued multiple times. So for me, it's like, how much more dysfunction does the ownership need to go through for this Phoenix Suns team? And before like you can even get down to the organizational dysfunction that is on the floor in every bad decision they've made, down there. I mean, like, do you know who their GM is? Like when I discovered who is running this team, it is actually
Talking about Brian Gregory?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's like, he has no experience running a sports team.
Yeah. I mean, well, that was
He's
one of the things,
buddy.
right? Well, that was when he got put in the position. One of the talking pieces was that he didn't really have the substantive experience for the role, but he was another Spartan. Whether that proves to be true or not will remain to be seen. And we're spending way too much time on the Suns. But
I know.
to your point, no, I'm just saying because they're not going to be one of the more interesting storylines this year.
They're not.
But to your point, I didn't understand what you were saying with that. Look, it takes so much scandal to usurp these guys. He'll be fine for a while. And also, you just wanted to bring up the Panthers. It's cool. I get it.
We're 3-3, baby. We're 3-3. All right.
Yeah, you guys beat the Cowboys last week. I understand. It's fine.
We're good at home. We're bad on the road. Don't worry about it. All right. I'm going to give you a softball on this one. The Washington Wizards.
How many guys are going to play in this rotation? They have like 14 players who are, I mean, Marvin Bagley has looked reasonable once again. I'm not going to get my hopes up for Marvin Bagley, but if you look, we talked about this when I saw him in Summer League, but also their preseason, they have like 14 guys who are viable NBA players. Now, on what level and on their development, and some of these guys may not pan out, but they need to make like a consolidation deal with somebody that's looking for youth, but that ain't happened during the season.
Yep. Mine's pretty simple. I think that they are following the Oklahoma City method of having some veterans on their team. They're going to play them very gently, very softly throughout the year, kind of rebuild their trade value. So I'm excited to see if Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum can build themselves back up into trade bait. So that is what I'm excited about this Wizards team. I don't think they're going to win a lot. I think they've got some exciting young pieces. I think it's going to be fantastic to kind of give them the runway to kind of explore what this, Koulibaly, Sarr, Johnson, all Bub Carrington, all the guys they have on this team. I'm like, yeah, cool. Let's explore that. You're going to get there eventually. But, at the first half of the season, before the trade deadline, they're going to try and, trade these veteran guys and try and recoup some assets. And I just want to see what Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum look like, and then what kind of trade happens there. And I think that could be part of your consolidation trade. That kind of makes a little bit more sense for them. So, yeah, that's how I feel about the Wizards. I think they're going to lose a bunch of games, but I also think they're going to be very entertaining to watch. Our boy Rush actually said that the Wizards are going to might mess around and make the playoffs this year. I wouldn't go that far, but I do think they're going to be a fun, league pass team.
He's feeling himself because of that Pistons selection last year, which was a good one. The Wizards one is not. Yeah. So next team.
Hit me with it.
My storyline has changed because this is a little bit of Palace intrigue. Are the Sacramento Kings going to use this UCL injury against Keegan Murray in debates for his extension? Like, is this going to be something that they try to weaponize? Also, much like obliques last year, UCL has become the new injury du jour. Same thing that hurt Jared McCain.
Yeah,
or that he was afflicted with.
Yeah, that's our new injury of the year. That's really
for those
fun.
out there. It's the ulnar collateral ligament. I'm not looking it up right now, so I might have gotten something wrong. And it's in your thumb.
It's in your thumb. It's right here. Yeah. So it's this little ligament right here.
Yeah.
Fun little injury there. I think that if they're a smart franchise, they would. Because exactly the way that, and I'm not comparing the player and I'm not comparing the circumstance, but we've seen this from teams time and time again. They use the injury history of a player to lowball them on a contract, and then they get the best version of them once they get healthy. So think about Steph Curry, obviously, is an obvious example. I'm not comparing Keegan Murray and Steph Curry, but Steph Curry's ankle injuries were the reasons that the Warriors were able to sign him to like a 4-year, $80 million deal. And then they were able to draft and pay Klay Thompson and Draymond Green before giving the max extension to Steph Curry down the road, obviously paying him finally what he was worth. But because of that injury history, they were able to get a good player on a really team-friendly contract. Now, Keegan Murray,
this is a freak injury. Those were perceived as being nagging. Those are injuries that are much easier to argue against in terms of if they're reoccurring, the detrimental effect. So, and it's also just, if Keegan Murray misses 12 games, it's bad business for a player that's relatively healthy for the Kings to do that.
That's a really good point, but I would also say that the Kings have never shown a history of being a smart franchise as far as negotiating goes. They kind of just pay everybody that comes across who is deserving, but they're not that guy. They paid De'Aaron Fox, they paid Domantas Sabonis, they overpaid guys that were not of that caliber of the contract they received. Now, if they want to be a more intelligent franchise, they clearly wouldn't have the roster they currently have. I'm just going to use your point about Keegan Murray because this is a bad team. I don't even have anything nice to say about the Kings. If the best thing that could happen to them is that Dennis Schroeder from the Eurobasket is the guy that shows up in Sacramento. But we've seen it year in and year out that he's not that guy unless he's playing an international play. And there's something a little bit more. Then he becomes the point god.
Yeah.
That's the best thing that the Kings can hope for. Like, other than that, they're stuck with these contracts. No one has any desire for DeRozan, Levine, Sabonis. Keon Ellis might be their most like sought after contract, not just because of like how good of a player he is, but also because of how little money he's making. Everybody else is overpaid. Malik Monk is overpaid. No, he's a good player, and no one will trade for him.
I think Malik Monk is making like 18 million a year. That is totally
more
reasonable.
Than he should be making.
I think that puts him in the. I think that puts him in the range for that type of player. But anyway, too much Kangs talk too. We got to get a little quicker with some of these, especially with the bad teams.
That's a very good point. All right, switching back over to the Eastern Conference. I gave you a softball one. I want to give you a more interesting one. Give me your Bucks take.
I mean, does this team have an official second option offensively? Like, is there a second player that's going to strike any fear in the opponent?
That's currently on the roster. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at it. I'm like, Ryan Hollins.
Yeah,
is he fun? Yeah. Is he like? I want to try and be a little bit more positive. One of the things I'm going to say is I'm going to love the defensive front court of Turner and Giannis. I think I'm just going to love watching that. That was the thing that I was most interested in seeing, is just watching Miles Turner protect the rim and then watching Giannis be more of a free safety again and kind of get back to his roaming ways where he's just disrupting passing lanes, like slapping away backdoor cuts or baseline cuts. That's it. That's what I had for the Bucks.
In fairness, even though Miles Turner actually can blitz a screen or show and do a couple things that matter, the point of attack defense was a big reason we lost Giannis in that role last year. It should be better no matter what, even if it's Kevin Porter or Ryan Hollins are a better option than Dame. But I'm with you. Like, if we get to see, I mean, this version of Giannis, especially now that every Antetokounmpo brother is in the organization, basically.
That was almost going to be my answer. It'd be like, so what do we expect from Alex Antetokounmpo?
Yeah. There is still. I can't remember the fourth brother's name off the cuff. I used to have memorized, but there is a fourth one that's out there. But it's besides the intrigue of that, like seeing Giannis fully unleashed in a year where he's going to have to rain down hell, should be fun.
Yeah, love that. Okay, you're up. Give me a team.
Let's talk about Dallas. And do we actually think that they're going to be able to cut against the grain with this oversized lineup, and is it viable enough offensively?
The oversized lineup was my point as well about the Dallas Mavericks. I love the idea of this giant, like, point Cooper Flag, PJ Washington, like Anthony Davis, one of the centers, and like a Najee Marshall or whoever the hell you want to stick else in that lineup. I kind of love this lineup. I love the idea of it. I love the idea that they are. I don't like Cooper Flag at the 3. I think it's an unnatural like fit for him. Anthony Davis, we're still doing the Anthony Davis thing where we pretend he's not a center, even though he's like, he can't shoot and he doesn't move the way he did on the perimeter, like he did back with the Lakers and the Pelicans. They're going to appease him. They're going to stick him at the 4. Quick question about the Mavs, just real quick. Is Anthony Davis on the trade block for you? It seems crazy.
Well, does it? Because he's got to be up for a massive extension next summer. And
that's kind of where I'm at.
If you're the Maverick, no, but
because
that's really the question about this team.
It's because they traded Luka for him. Because if it were anybody else and they acquired him like this, and then they ended up with the odds and they got Cooper Flag, and they would have been like, oh, well, obviously this guy's on the trade block. But it's because he was traded for Luka that there's no way that they can do it, but they should.
As far as I'm concerned, they didn't trade him for Luka because it was all part of a big scam that got them Cooper Flag, which provides all the coverage they need.
That's your actual answer then. Will the NBA get found out for rigging the Cooper Flag lottery for the Mavericks and rigging Luka going to the Lakers? I think that's your actual answer.
Because it's exactly what happened. But more importantly, this podcast isn't popular enough for them to quell my voice, so we're fine.
We can say whatever we want. This is
yeah.
This is wonderful. Okay,
but just so everybody's clear, much like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I will not kill myself. Just saying. I put it out there for public information. That's all.
You should really invest in one of those Men in Black guns in case that alien looking motherfucker Adam Silver comes around looking for you.
Oh man, that's just cold.
I'll say I just wanted to put my name in there so that Aaron also, I did not kill myself. I very much want to live. Okay. Another Eastern Conference team. And did you have anything else on the Mavs?
No, we're good. We're good. We're good.
I just wanted to make sure. It's like
I know. Appreciate it.
I'm going to throw around a team. I don't know. I'm going to give you another soft one. Actually, this is not soft because I don't know what the fuck the answer is. The Brooklyn Nets.
I mean, what is the intended purpose for this season? Like, what do they honestly hope to get out of this season? Because the mishmash of trying to develop this wealth of players that they drafted and the reality of having to manage the Cam Thomas and Michael Porter Jr. situations, it's just, this is going to be potentially like tragically bad.
Yeah. It was confusing whenever they drafted all those players in the first round. It was confusing then. It's still confusing now. My most interesting thing about the Brooklyn Nets is them as a trade facilitator, because they are one of the few teams in the league that actually have cap space, that have movable contracts, that have the space to absorb large contracts. And they can even use some of these players that they've recently drafted as bait if someone finds some interest in them. I think that's the most interesting thing the Brooklyn Nets can do. It's be the facilitator to make other trades happen. And, in that case, they will absorb a lot of picks. They'll absorb a lot of assets. And then they can really start to kind of narrow down who they are as a franchise, because I do think they have a good coach. I know we haven't seen a ton of them. I'm not giving Jordi Fernandez any more credit than I give Will Hardy. These are guys who are in kind of bad situations with teams that are not trying to win. And so for me, from what I've seen, the Nets have overperformed with Jordi Fernandez as their head coach. Now they give them this mismatch of players and they're like, wow, we really want to tank now. Well, he might coach them to a damn good record again. I mean, I know this is a demonstrably worse team than the one that we had last year, but are we sure that they can't, like, in a weakened East and with a good coaching and with some guys who can really score the basketball, could they really not, be a more feisty team than we think they are? It's possible, but it could be historically bad. It's more likely it'll be historically bad, to your
I like how, I appreciated the entire thought process was very nice there, but yeah.
I wanted to work my way through it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Give me a Western Conference team. Feed me.
Golden State Warriors.
That's tough, man. This is a team that I've been so down on and everybody else is so much higher on. And so that's really difficult for me. But I think I heard this on another podcast pretty recently that the Warriors, after they traded for Jimmy Butler, whenever they were all healthy, and what was it, like 31 wins?
We talked about it on this podcast. It went like 27-4 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. 30. It was like 31-11, I think, including the playoffs.
Oh, the playoffs. Okay.
Yeah. By the time it was over, I think it was 31-11. It's a really good win percentage. I think the thing that I would say that I'm most interested in is it's just Jonathan Kuminga. How he slots in, how the Warriors choose to use him. Do him and Steve Kerr still have this very tumultuous, combative relationship? How do the other guys feel about him? How are they going to deploy him? He's a very difficult player for me to kind of dissect, because it's based off hopes, dreams, and athleticism. I haven't really seen anything that he's supremely skilled at other than just being a freakish athlete. So if that's the case, how do they use him? Where do they deploy him? Does he close games? Is he, is
they
he the
use
first
him in
guy off the
trade
bench?
they use him in a trade on January 15th once he's trade eligible because he made so much additional money he's not available in December 15th, and they deploy him to Brooklyn.
Okay, well there you go. What is your most interesting thing about the Warriors?
How good can that defense be when it's healthy? Because what Al Horford provides for them is a rim protector and another switchable, hyper intelligent defender, that they have the ability to be an all-time great defensive unit when they roll out that group when it's healthy. Now, obviously, the health is going to be the caveat, but I think there's going to be some insane quarters early on with that group defensively where people are just going to be like, oh my God. Between Jimmy Butler, Draymond, and Al Horford, you can put whoever else out you want there. Now, I'm thinking Moses Moody and Steph Curry. Moody's now your point of attack defender. Curry's your weakest defender. That's going to be an insanely good defensive unit for whatever time we get it for.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, that defense is going to be hellish. If they're healthy and they're on the floor between those three guys, that is the IQ on that team is otherworldly. It's championship level across the board. Everybody's been to a finals, if not won a finals. Jimmy Butler's the only one who hasn't, but he's been to multiple. So that's a team that is built for one last run, and I think that they're very aware of that. I think that they know that this is a last gasp.
I mean, Dre's even called them Golden State Warriors, right? Like they're in on the joke, but the thing is, they have enough depth. Like I am high enough on them to think that this is more viable as a full season thing. But health when it's that many older players. But we don't need to keep talking about them because that's not the point.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. All right. I want to move on. I want to do the Hornets. Give me something good about Charlotte, baby.
You want something good about Charlotte.
You don't have to say anything good about Charlotte.
Well, I mean, thanks to you, what I'll be monitoring with the Hornets is Brandon Miller in season 3 and whether or not he's ready to take that next leap to superstardom. Or not.
Love it.
To at least us knowing that he, the superstar level potential is there. Does he get to that next step where we're like we felt like with Amen Thompson by the end of last season, we're like, all right, this guy's about to just fall off that cliff into kind of this pit of superstar.
Mine kind of ties in with another team if you want to go back to back on this one, because it's a Western Conference team. So I just want to start this from the beginning. It's the Utah Jazz, and my thing about them is how good Ace Bailey looks has led to Lauri Markkanen being on the trade block much sooner than expected. And I also think he would be amazing in Charlotte. Lauri Markkanen going to Charlotte, it provides like a veteran presence. It provides shooting. It provides defense. It provides them with like a viable third option next to Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. That's not that's not Bridges.
Yeah, but what's the deal that makes sense for Utah?
I haven't done it. I haven't done it through the trade machine, but they do do have
Knipple.
Knipple
and Bridges, because you got to get to the money. That's the thing, right? So Bridges has to be in the deal for the money. But Absolutely. Then you have Bridges is kind of an interesting player because he's going to be up for an extension soon, and Miles Bridges is probably not worth what Miles Bridges thinks he is. So you probably got to attach something to it. And Liam McNeely ain't spicy enough, nor is Ryan Kalkbrenner. So you got to give up Knipple in the future first, probably. Yeah, at least that's probably got to start it.
I more or less just got excited about the idea of like Markkanen moving on to like that team, just because I think LaMelo Ball would be able to find him in almost every space that he's never had a guard that's been as good of a passer as LaMelo Ball is. For as much as we like make jokes about like LaMelo Ball. He is a gifted passer. Like he's a little bit too stylish for my taste, but he's a gifted passer. Brandon Miller is a lethal scorer whenever he's kind of got it all working together. We haven't seen if he's really going to be able to do that yet, but I expect the year 3 jump from him. He's got a lot of Paul George in his game, and I think that's who he kind of modeled his basketball game after.
Yeah, it's
And
his
I
hero.
think that yeah, it's his hero, and I think Markkanen would be just such a seamless fit. Yeah. Now, do I know how the money and all the picks work? No. And do I think that Charlotte's got the package to kind of put it all together, or if they're even close enough to put it all together for a guy like Markkanen? Probably
That
not. But I got excited about the idea.
that collective injury history would also give me some serious pause if I'm the Hornets brass and looking into that. Like, that's a
Has that ever
lot of.
stopped them? Has that ever stopped them before?
I mean, I'm just saying, I
They
look,
saw
I
Gordon
like
Hayward
it.
and they were like, sign him up. Let's sign him to $150 million straight up. Like
Fair
let's
enough.
give Gordon Hayward everything he wants. I don't
Yeah.
know where that came from, but yeah. So just real quickly, if you want to jump on the Jazz, if there's anything you want to do, since I just
Oh,
brought them up.
you want to move, just let that be the natural segue.
Well, we talked about
Odd,
the Hornets and then we kind of jumped into the Jazz, but you can
oddly
talk about the
enough,
Hornets and the Jazz.
the biggest question, storyline, concern, issue, whatever, is going to be whether or not Larry Markkinen finishes the season with them. And a lot of, the favorite kind of trade candidate in the, potosphere or whatever we want to call it's been Detroit. And that makes an absolute
Oh
ton of
my
sense
God.
to me. Like
I
you think
love
about
that.
that. Yeah. Detroit has the assets, particularly with Duran or Ivy, because they're not keeping both, but maybe they decide they ship one along with whatever contract ends up working, whether it's Duncan Robinson, because he's not fully guaranteed going forward. So he's actually an easier trade piece, and maybe they look at some draft equity. But there hasn't been somebody that's been, or a fit that's been mentioned for Markkanen that makes more sense to me than that. But the question in general is just like, separate from what you said, Bryce Sensabaugh has played very well for Utah. I have not thought of Bryce Sensabaugh as that type of player, but he's showing something. He finished the season last year really strong. So I think you're making the right point in terms of like, they're finally starting to maybe identify some of those young star to superstar level players that I kept questioning them not having, especially when you think about, of course, I'm going to blank out on his name right now. The big guy from Duke.
Dude, I know.
So let's both do this.
It's just so annoying that I can't remember his name because it's such a ridiculous name.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's so annoying because when we hear it, we're going to be so mad that we didn't remember it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm editing part of this out. So
well, there you
okay.
Go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Oh, Filipowski.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Filipowski.
Yeah. So
start with Filipowski.
Yeah, but when you talk about, Filipowski, Sensabaugh, I don't think is a superstar, but Ace Bailey obviously has shown some stuff that's really exciting for them. Markkanen makes less sense when you think about the age and the cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ace Bailey's been so good that he's redefined just in the preseason that he's redefined their timeline. And he's like, well, Markkanen was the key piece of our rebuild. And now that we've seen Ace Bailey for like a couple of games.
Yeah, let's remember it is still preseason, right? Like we've seen some people. Like we've watched some guys get going during preseason who were never heard from again. So
I wanted to bring this up, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I know we're trying to move on. But my thing about preseason's always been this: I will not watch it. I won't watch it for any sport. And here's my reasoning why. If a player looks good in preseason, it's because that player is good and he is awesome and he will continue to be good. If a player is bad in preseason, it's preseason. It doesn't matter. That is my rule about how preseason works, and it will serve me for the rest of the time. And I will never feel wrong about that. But like, damn, he looked good in preseason.
Feel like it's a little reductive, but so obviously I'm a little bit more of a sicko, although I've not been watching preseason the last few days. But like Jazion Gortman happened to be on the Thunder, and I'm like, oh man, I love this guy. So it's just like where some of these guys have ended up, like tracking some of those guys. Oh, has this guy improved that one skill that's keeping him out of the league? I do still like that. That being said, you're not much like Summer League, you're not going to learn much. You're not
Yes,
getting anything. You're just reinforcing previously held notions about 95% of the guys you're seeing. So that kind of goes
absolutely.
to your point. Yeah.
Okay, we're moving on to another Eastern team. I'm going to give you one that I do not like, and I'm going to let you go ahead and take this one. Give me something about the Toronto Raptors.
Well, I mean, look, we already know what all the questions are going to be here with Toronto. Can the shooting be good enough with this group? I'm not. We're going to give out some preseason numbers real quick. Grady Dick has looked better in terms of his shooting, and RJ Barrett continues to just be a better player than I give him credit for. That all being said, it's preseason, and I have a lot of questions about how the Raptors are going to shoot and score the ball.
My thing about this team is, are they going to be the first team to have a players only meeting during the season? I probably put it about 11 and a half games before the Raptors are just like, yeah, the players held a players only meeting and they really need to figure out what kind of team they are. And they're like 3-8 and they're just like, nothing's working and it's miserable. Because I told you, and I've said this a million times, I don't like this team. I don't get the construction of it. I don't get how it's going to work. Even if they were a great team defensively, I just don't know where the offense is going to come from because there's no one to make it like functional. It's just a bunch of guys that are going to take their turns. RJ Barrett's going to get the ball and be like, oh shit, it's my possession. And then it's going to be Emmanuel Quickly. And then it's going to be Scotty Barnes. And then it's going to be Grady Dick. And then it's going to be whoever's turn it is next. And it's just like, I don't find any joy in that.
So here's what they will do. I mean, we don't have to go too far on the Raptors, but what they're going to do, and they've done it the last couple of years, is they're going to play fast. And so to compensate for their lack of half court offensive creation and what I expect to be kind of dynamic spacing from an office standpoint, and you could see it in preseason with this group, and they have enough of the physical athletes to get out and do it. Colin Murray-Boyles has looked good getting up and down from the center position. He plays an
Good
undersized center position, which is always – they're going to play fast. And what now, can they play fast enough to keep themselves in games offensively? And can they force the other team to adjust enough? Like, are they going to be good enough defensively? Like, will they be able to assert their will with that style of play enough to compensate for their half-court issues? That'll be really interesting to watch. But I think this defense is actually, we talked about this before, between their coach, Darko Rajakovic, being so driven by defense and what they have from physical athlete standpoint, I think this defense should be very good.
I think they were a top 15 defense last year.
Well, they finished on that crazy run during that stretch that we try not to give credence to, where for the last 15, they were the best defense in the league. Like, I think from mid-February on last year. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's a success if they're like a top 12 in defense and a top 18 in offense, because I don't know where their offense is really going to come from. But I think they could be like a top 12 defensive team.
I bet they're a top 8 defensive team and a top 16 offensive team. That's where I'd put them overall.
16?
Top 18 offensive team, top, but I think they'll be a top, what I say, top
defense.
Top 8. Yeah, I think they'll be a top 8 defense.
Top 8 defense? By that. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I'll stand on that.
I like that. All right, give me a team.
Let's talk about Portland.
Oh, yeah, love that one. So for the Blazers, there's a lot of spots to choose. I'm looking for an even bigger Deni Avdija leap. I'm very excited about what Drew's going to look like while he's there, what the rotations look like. But more importantly, I think that this could be a very staunch defensive team. Now that we just talked about it with the Raptors, how good of a defensive team can this Portland Trailblazers team be whenever they are fully locked in and clicking? I think that that's a big mainstay of what Chauncey Billups wants to do. He wants to be a good defensive team. I think he wants to get out in transition. I think he wants to create a lot of offense based on turnovers. And I'm just super curious what that looks like whenever the Blazers trying to put it into motion with a team that's, a lot of people kind of have lurking in the playoff area. This is a team with, I mean, they don't have zero expectations. They don't have high expectations, but people are expecting some things from this Blazers team. So that's where my mind goes, is just how good they can be defensively with the personnel that they have, which I think they have some really good players.
Yeah, I mean that they were a very mixed bag defensively last year, but the rough
Yes.
outlines are there, and Klingon being on the floor is really almost a fulcrum point for that defense, which can be the tough part about his health history. We'll see, but we all know what I'm going to be watching most. I love Scoot. I love me some Shaden Sharp, but I'm
Scoot.
officially I want to know what the young Hansen experience is going to be like this year, because there's going to
Yeah.
be so many highlights and weird moments, and I might have been wrong about the 3-point shooting. It's to me, it's at least the most dynamics. Look, if they make the playoffs, that changes things. I don't know if they're ready to get there because of what the West is like. What we'll be probably talking about the most is just kind of the young Hansen experience, including, his preseason game was more watched than like the NBA final or summer league games were more watched in China than the NBA finals, stuff like that, which is pretty wild.
Man, I'm so excited about what he can be. He's just a really exciting young player. I hope that they are able to develop him and bring him along at a reasonable pace and not try and like ask him to do too much too early. But they've got a lot of guys that are in front of him. They got some older guys that are there to kind of like guide some of the younger guys. That's why Drew and Dame, and to a lesser extent Jeremy Grant, those guys are still there. I mean, Grant's there because they can't trade him, but while
Yeah,
he's there,
yeah.
might as well use his experience, his wealth of knowledge.
Jeremy Grant's there because Damon Stoudemire, or excuse me, Damian Lillard, Damon Stoudemire, talk about going old school Blazers. Damian Lillard insisted that the Blazers do something, and then he demanded a trade right after they signed him to
Right
a poison
after
pill
it.
contract. But hey, they're
Absolutely.
teammates again, so that's nice. It still worked out.
It's pleasant. I'm sure he's glad to
Yeah,
have him back.
like it comes
Um,
full circle.
yes. We're getting out of some of the nitty gritty. So we're going to get into a team that I'm not fully aware of what they're doing. Let's go with the Celtics.
I mean, the biggest question for the Celtics is who do they want to be this year? I think
Yeah,
like what is this going to be Jaylen Brown and the boys, and or are we going to see, are they going to continue kind of the offensive scheme they ran before? We've seen some of those answers because obviously they have limitations in terms of playing. They've got a platoon at the center position now, and it's such a different look from having guys like KP and Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford. So just what does I don't believe that this Celtics team we're going to see this year is really going to have a great amount of ripple effects going into the future for them, because obviously Jason Tatum's the biggest stone in that pond.
sure.
But I am interested to see in this like singular season, what are they going to try to do? What do they want to be?
This is the team with the most number of options for me because they have no centers. They have good pieces as far as like the kind of backcourt and the wing guys are concerned, but they have no centers. They have a coach who's a complete nut job in every single way that we can imagine. Who will like from what I've heard and what I've seen and what I've read, he's not the kind of guy that's going to tank or even think about the idea of tanking.
Yeah.
So that's not going to happen. And so, like you said, what is this team going to be? Do they pivot? Do they make trades? Do they duck under the tax? Do they try and hold the fort until Jason Tatum comes back? Do they, restock the cabinet and trade Derek White or Peyton Pritchard? Uh, do they, get rid of Anthony Simons? It's like Brad Stevens. So I think that's my answer. It's like, what does Brad Stevens do? Brad Stevens, that's my answer. What makes the Boston so interesting? Because he's going to be watching Jason Tatum the whole time, and he's going to be watching the on-court product of what the Celtics are able to do without Jason Tatum and without all the guys they lost: Luke Cornett, Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, all those guys. Their entire center depth is gone.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and if what this team looks like, obviously, whether or not Anthony Simons is a seamless fit, whether or not Anthony Simons has increased his value, all those things obviously are going to go a long way. And whether or not Brad Stevens does more to get under the luxury tax and some of
Right.
the other things that have been presumed. Because
Well,
obviously,
I think they're going to find out with
yeah,
Simons. I don't think they
yeah,
have
of
a
course.
chance to trade him anytime soon, and so I think they're going to find out what they have with him and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, they want to find out. Yeah.
Sure. All right. Next team.
Why don't we talk about the? Let's talk about Houston.
Okay. The Rockets. Well, I think we kind of talked about this on the last pod, so I won't spend too much time on it. My question is obviously the big hole that's left at point guard. So basically, how they fill that role, and does Ime Udoka even like try and replace uh, Fred Van Vliet? Does he just try and go with a Reed Shepard, Amen Thompson, Aaron Holiday kind of conglomeration at point guard, and then just figure it out from there? So that's my big question for Houston. Otherwise, I think that they are really well positioned. I think they're really well coached. I think they're really well rostered. They've got everything but a point guard to make a run at this.
This is one of the ones where we don't have to overthink it. I had the exact same question written down, and we don't really need to overtalk it, because for as much as there's so many other elements of this Rockets team that are going to be really exciting to watch and that I'm interested to see develop, Alperen Sengun continuing to blossom and grow into a guy who I think will enter the top kind of 20 range of a player. This is what's going to define the Rockets this year. Like, there isn't even like, there's not anything else that'll happen. Maybe there's things that become, downstream effects of this conversation, but that's the thing that's going to matter the most for their season.
Absolutely. They've got everything else. That team is ready-made to compete for a championship, but they just need someone to run the point, and they need more shooting, which, they could either fill in-house, or they could try and sign some sort of veteran point guard to kind of fill that role. Last one before we hit the top 15. We're at the halfway point. The Chicago Bulls. I know this is hard for you, but I got to ask.
Does this team have a centralizing star? Like, is there actually a player on this team right now that you feel like you're building around for the future? And I hate saying that because of how I feel about Coby White as a player, but he's just a notch below being capable of being that type of player. And I don't think that's Josh Giddey. Modest is the guy. So I guess, let's develop this. It's really, can Modest Buzelis show himself to be a player that's a star level player for them to build around?
That is exactly my answer. Very excited to see year 2 of him. Very excited to see what he does with this newer role that is completely his and his alone. Now that they've made some of the trades that they've made, and they've kind of centered the idea of the team around him and these young guards. That's what I want to see too. Can he make that development? Can he make that jump? And can the Bulls get an asset in a trade? That's the last. Can they get a draft pick in a trade that they make? Just curious.
Not touching that one.
Not touching that. I'll leave it alone. Okay, so we're in the top 15 teams now. We're moving right along. We can do this in like under an hour 40 if we push it. All right, so give me let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, I like it. Let's talk about the Clippers. Let's talk about the Clippers.
Yeah, let's talk about LAC. Aspiration. do they get the patch back on the jersey? I think that is the most interesting thing about this team. I mean, like, it's still going to be the cloud that's hanging over this whole thing. Like, what happens with Steve Ballmer once the season actually gets started? Because the Clippers have a good, if not old, team. They have some really great pieces. They have a great coach. They have some guys. It's the most, on paper, if they stay healthy, kind of basketball team. But the aspiration thing is going to be hanging over this because the story's not going away. Pablo Torre seems to come out with new documents every week. And
did you listen to the Mark Cuban Pablo Torre standoff?
I caught a couple of like clips of it. I have not heard the full episode, but I have it downloaded on my phone for the plane tomorrow. Whenever I'm going back home, I am going to listen to that on the plane. I'm
Yeah, it's
so
pretty
excited.
wild.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's just like, do you ever hear how like Pablo keeps saying, as I have reported so far? He
Yeah.
always keeps like, he's like, I'm not even done with my reporting.
Yeah.
He's an in-depth, like long form journalist. He's one of the few ones that are left. So like I know he has more and it's going to get worse. And like this story is the black cloud that's hanging over the entire Clippers organization.
At this point,
Kawhi,
is Bomber appreciative of Cuban running all this interference, or is he like, dude, I need you to stop poking the bear, like just chill out on fucking with Pablo Torre, please?
when he just held up that meme,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
billionaire meme,
yeah,
the
yeah,
Simpsons thing, he's
yeah,
like, I'm Pablo in this scenario.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, what do you have anything for the Clippers, or was that your answer as well?
I mean, at this point, much like before, look, yeah, you know what? Just for the sake of the conversation, what the rotations look like for the Clippers actually interests me quite a bit. And you and I had
Yeah,
already talked about that, so we don't have to go too much into it now. But they've got 10 or 11 guys who have a lot of versatility in terms of the way they play. In
sure.
seeing a coach as creative as Tyronn Lue coach that group is going to be a lot of fun to watch as something on the court. I'm excited to see that because
I
even though I
like
don't
all the
necessarily
pieces.
yeah. I don't necessarily
I,
love him coming out the gate saying Bradley Beal is going to start, and then he's challenging Bradley Beal to find like that inner great defender that he kind of never was. But I'm
he's
still
always been
interested
such
to
an
see.
overrated defender. Did that start in Washington?
Yeah,
Did people just
he
start making
is.
up that he was a better defender than he was?
He's
It's bizarre.
completely adequate to
Yeah,
somewhat spirited at times. Yeah,
yeah. There you go. That's a really good way to
yeah.
put it. So I'm gonna hop in. This is we're kind of the East has a little bit more drags than the West does, but I'm gonna go with the Pacers for you.
How do they score enough points?
It's a great question.
Especially now, and TJ McConnell's down now because apparently every player that's ever played in the state of Indiana has to hurt a lower extremity. But like that, just how are they going to score enough points? I'm starting to get a little worried now.
I started questioning like medical staffs at a certain point. Like Oklahoma City, whenever they were coming up, and it was like Durant got hurt, Westbrook got hurt, Ibaka got hurt, and at a certain point, I was like, who are our doctors? Who is who are our trainers? Who's taking care of these guys? It's a really good question in Indiana. Are they skimping on not like they don't want to go into the tax? Are they also not paying medical professionals? Um, I think you and I talked about this on the last episode. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it. My most interesting thing is still going to be Benedict Mathurin, what he becomes in the absence of Tyrese Halliburton, what Andrew Nemhard becomes, what Ben Shepherd becomes. But it's more to the point when you talk about point scoring. Ben Mathurin is maybe their like purest scorer, even over Pascal Siakam, as far as like just getting the ball in the basket, creating a shot for himself. He is a solo creator. It's not always pretty. It's not always in the flow of the offense.
And
It's going to
that's
be
the thing.
interesting to see if Rick Carlisle can kind of coach him through like being the player that he needs him to be, as far as like a score first, me first kind of playmaker, and then also playing within the flow of the offense and not alienating Pascal Siakam and all the other guys that are around him. So it's Mathurin for me. That's the most interesting part of the Pacers. If he can find that balance, it it cures a lot of what they're not going to get the playmaking and the passing and the gravity that Tyrese Halliburton brings. That's gone. They don't have another guy like that. Very few teams have a guy like that. But the scoring part of it clears up a lot of the confusion there because there's a big gap of about like 19 points a game that needs to get filled somehow.
I also hope, and I say this partially tongue in cheek, but somebody who is motivating Matherin needs to explain to him, look, beyond the fact that this is going to make you a much better player, like 2 more assists per game will make you probably 10 to 15 million more dollars,
Oh my
considering that
God.
he's, like it just, if he shows more dimensionality in his offensive game, just because of his age and how exciting of an athlete he is, like it's going to go a long way in terms of the zeros it puts on that paycheck. So like beyond the motivation on the floor, there's some other big perks because he's going to have such a big stage and such an opportunity to really display who he is. There's not
Yeah.
a lot of guys in this conversation in terms of the rookie extension guys who are going to be given the level of stage that Matherin's going to because of the circumstance, which is just so wild to think about how we got here.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe you're up, my friend. Give me a team.
Let's talk about Minnesota.
I was about to say you still got some stinkers on your board, but I like
I
where
don't
you're
think I have
at.
that many.
Well, you still have some. I just said some.
Yeah.
There's a very distinct one that I'm thinking of that I'm sure you'll find it here in a second. Minnesota. So my big thing with them is, can they join Oklahoma City and Denver in that top tier group? Because I think they've got the continuity. I think they've got the coaching. They've got the A1 superstar. They have the talent surrounding them, and they have the experience having been to the Western Conference Finals, twice in a row. The continuity now comes with the second year that with Cap being gone. Chris Finch has been there the whole time. He really found a way to reach Julius Randle. They re-signed Naz Reid. They lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They re-signed Julius Randle. They have Jaden McDaniels. They have Anthony Edwards. They still have Mike Conley. They still have Dante DiVincenzo. They have a team that I like. But can they join that upper tier that no one puts them in the same class as Oklahoma City and Denver, even though they beat Denver and they pushed Oklahoma City in some playoff rounds. So that's it for me. It's like, can they make the leap to elite? That's my question about Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you can make an argument that's completely justifiable that they've already kind of put themselves into the elite thing, and we haven't been kind enough to them. But
that's fair.
I mean, look, hey, this as you said, this was a Western Conference finalist against the prior champions. I don't, you get to that Final Four. And when you do it the way that they did it, not against an injured team or a depleted team, but the way they did, I think we have given them a little bit of short shrift, and in part because of how dynamic their offseason was last year and how different that team looked and how it took a while for that to coalesce. For me, the biggest thing that I'm going to be watching, I'm really interested in a lot of their bench, but do they have a lead guard? Do they have a point guard?
That is a great. I think DiVincenzo has to make the leap as a point guard, as a playmaker.
He's not, but he's just not. He's a combo guard. He can't be your primary. So,
but I think that's what Finch has been like teaching him to be.
Yeah, but there's so many elements to me about playing point guard at that level that's preternatural that it's like you can get this guy to be, but they need somebody that can get them into stuff, distribute the ball. It's not Rob Dillingham. It was Mike Conley. I think he's too old. And I think
so. That's the reports that I've heard out of Minnesota is that they have Conley working with DiVincenzo like very heavily.
I don't
just
like. I buy that it's happening. I don't buy that it's going to work.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, but the lead guard thing is the most important thing, and I think you're absolutely right. That actually probably should have been my point. So, because I think that's what they're missing to become elite.
Yeah,
but those kind of guards don't just grow on trees. So
no, as we're seeing, like they're becoming, more and more. I feel like they're more difficult to find. Like the high quality backup point guard, I think, is taking a little bit of a dip over the last few years. I mean, guys like Monte Morris kind of, fell away, and I think also just because of this notion of positionless basketball and stuff, we're just not seeing as many really strong reserve guards, in my opinion, at the point guard position. We just kind of have more guys that can do more things.
No, I completely agree. So I got my next team for you is the Miami Heat.
Are they
There's
actually
a
going
lot to
to?
pick from.
Are they going to actually maintain their commitment to playing fast, or are we just seeing this in the preseason and it goes back to the Heat that we've been watching for way too many years now?
That's a really good answer. My answer was going to be: is this the last year that we really start thinking about Bam in terms of like superstar status if he doesn't make a jump? I remember that like he was underrated, and then he was like probably overrated, and now it's like people have this expectation of him. It's like they want him to be 24-12 when he's really only been like 17-9 at 18-11 at his best, but he was always a third option. And now, there's no Jimmy Butler. You're running out a team with a lot of pieces that I like, but no superstar player and Bam was probably supposed to be slotted and into that position, but he's not quite reached that level. So is there another level for him to go up?
I mean, I think in fairness to him, he has been their second option before too. But your
No, I
point
think that
still,
yeah.
your point remains, and what's going to be interesting is there's this weird kind of push pull dynamic of Bam's development, where him being able to get further away from the basket was all of us wanted to see for him to expand his game. But now the problem is he's away from the basket too often, and
Yeah.
it didn't increase his scoring volume; it increased his area of the floor that he was effective from, but it actually seemed to make him less effective as an offensive player. And so it's just like the best version of Bam is not a number one option, in any
No.
system. And anybody who ever thought that, I think, was kind of out of their heads. But you make the point where it's like he's never really even been like a 20-point per game player. He's what he really is a phenomenal defensive player who's a little less offensively assertive than you would like, but he does so many other things, and we'll see. Like I
Yeah.
think it was a rough year for Bam last year because it was the first time his defense kind of dropped, and it's been the thing that's kind of always buoyed him. You can kind of deal with everything else with Bam, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but whatever kind of warts and stuff you see in his game, they become, I think, a little bit more exposed if his defense isn't at that all NBA level, because that covers up a lot of things for him.
Absolutely agree. All right. Need another team from you, my friend.
Memphis?
Ooh, that's good. This is fun. This is a fun team because there's a lot of questions around this team going into the season. Still with a lot of injuries.
Can we touch on that? Because, well, you go. Sorry.
No. Go ahead. I mean, we're already there. We already talked about the injuries. Let's get to it.
Okay, because it was the only reason I said you go was because I'm now kind of stealing what my point was. But just for those that aren't aware, the Grizzlies are starting the season with Ja Morant with some weird injury that he's saying people are tweaking, but he's not playing. Triple J's out with turf toe. Zach Edey had a fused ankle, and Brandon Clark has something called synovitis, which is inflammation in the knee that required more surgery. I also don't know why we're getting you all the medical terms today. I looked up a lot of stuff, but who's even playing big man for them? Santi Aldama and Jock Landale? Does that excite you? Like, this is already another walking wounded season.
Yeah, that's not really stepping on the point because that's kind of where I was going to go with it. I was just like, can they figure out this team long enough? Like, can they stay healthy enough for them to figure out what this team is?
Yeah.
I mean, they've got a brand new coach, and the guy's never had like a very clear, this is his first full year as the, full-time head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies. He's got a player he's played in 60 games once in his entire NBA career. I believe Ja Morant's played in 60 games once.
I believe that is correct.
I think he played in like 65.
Well, what's kind of awkward when you look at Ja, what's weird is you kind of look at the games over the seasons besides the year that he was suspended, and it actually doesn't look as not 60. It was over. He's never played over 70, but he played more than 60 games. He averaged over his first 4 years in the league, like 63 games. I'm not going to be able to do this math quickly right now. And then he played 9. So it just fell off. But the problem is it's the when he's missing games kind of always feels like for these weird blocks that are very impactful, and he's
Yeah.
not healthy in the playoffs. He's your point is valid no matter what, but you actually look at the numbers and separate that of 2 years ago, it's not as shocking as it feels, I think is what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. I mean, that's my answer for the Grizzlies. Like, can they stay healthy? Also, I just want to bring up one aside. Me and my buddy were talking about this earlier. Turf toe needs to be given a different name because the way when people hear it, they don't think it's as serious as it is. Joe Burrow is missing an entire NFL season with turf toe, but it's just like because we don't have a better term for it, because it's not ACL tear. It's because it doesn't have that like weight and that gravity. But turf toe is serious. Darius Garland's had it. He missed like months out of the season. I mean, these are serious injuries and they debilitate a player.
For anybody out there that's not understanding, if it requires surgery, it's serious. Like,
it's serious.
I don't care what the title is. You can call it Tootsie Toe or like I don't care. If you got to get surgery for it and you play on your feet, I think
you play on your feet.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to touch on the Grizzlies before we move on?
Nah.
Okay. I got for you the Orlando Magic.
Does the offense look dynamic?
That's all it is.
I'm going to hammer that button until we get to the playoffs. And now their first play of preseason, I watched them run a split action for something and try to get Bane coming on the backside. And I was like, oh, this was sexy. It didn't look like that the whole game, but it at least looked like they were already recognizing how to weaponize Desmond Bane in ways that we had talked about before that I just needed to see. Not at 4 guys standing around and watching Paolo kind of back and spin around and do all these things. Like, he's amazing at that, and that's great, but at least give me some movement around it. We don't have to just be watching like, you can have more than one good dancer on the floor. It's like you're a dance team, but the one person dances while everybody else watches them. Like, give them some rhythm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be excited. My answer was not seeing 5 people with a foot in the paint. Yeah. So that's my answer for the Magic. It's the only answer because if their offense doesn't work now, then it's a Mosley problem.
Yeah,
it's not a like Orlando didn't provide them with the personnel. It becomes a coaching problem at that point. So it's got to be the offense. That's the only answer. Respect it. Next one, hit me.
Well, I mean, we might as well do New Orleans.
I was waiting. I was like, that's.
I was assuming that was the stinker. Yeah,
that was the stinker we were talking about. So this one's really hard, but I was trying to make a joke about Joe Dumars. Basically, it's like, does New Orleans as a franchise survive the season, or do they just pick up and move halfway through? But the actual answer is, and it's going to, because we kind of touched on this a little bit when we were talking about scoring champion, it's Zion. Zion, skinny Zion, I don't really care if he's skinny, fat, whatever. Can he stay on the floor? And what does the rest of the team look like with him around it? What does Trey Murphy look like? What does Herb Jones look like? Because this is a player that when he has played, he is a son unto himself, because everybody has to watch what he's doing because he is so sudden in his movements. He is so sudden in his athleticism and in his jolt toward the basket. Whenever he makes his move toward the basket, hardly any player you ever see rotates because of how sudden it all is. So if he is actually healthy and able to play this year, and say he gives us 60 games, and I know that's pie in the sky, what does that look like, and what does that do for every other person in the lineup with him? How does his gravity, his weight, not to make a joke, how does that help every other player find their offensive place and their place within the structure of the team. And I've also heard some really good and positive things about DeJounte Murray coming back. So how he fits back into that is also a very interesting thing to me.
Well, yeah. So DeJounte Murray, for those that don't know, is on the same track as Jason Tatum. Obviously got hurt earlier, but people are just raving, not ranting. That's not fair. Raving about apparently the speed that he's recovering at. So I'll piggyback that one because
that's fun.
If DeJounte Murray comes back, what the hell do they do with all these guards?
That's a great question because they got Jordan Poole too, and I try to avoid having that conversation. But now
is Jose Alvarado then a trade player?
Odd man out? Yeah.
Is Jeremiah Fears not going to play as a new regime just use their highest draft pick on him, or is he part of like a mandate for play? That's just it's a lot of guys that I mean I'm not going to say need to get fed because Alvarado's not that level of player. I very much think Fears will have to be a very ball dominant player, and we already know the case is true for the other two guys. So, just what do you do with all of that if we do see DeJounte Murray back this year? You want to talk about like an impaction or the logjam of just a lot of issues that I think are centered around a lot of guys that I think want to define themselves in this league right now and in at different stages, right? Like DeJounte Murray is going to want to prove that he's back. Jordan Poole is trying to prove that last year was really the signs of something. Plus, he's Jordan Poole. We just know he wants to get him up. And I think Jeremiah Fears is really hungry to prove that all the questions about him weren't fair, which, you know, he's going to be super young. It's just interesting at that position for that group.
Absolutely. That's a lot of guards in rotation there. I mean, you just mentioned 5. Jones, Fears.
Well, Jones isn't even in the conversation. If you want to throw somebody else in there, it's Jordan Hawkins because Hawkins and Alvarado are trying to really figure out what's next for them in this league.
He's their de facto starting point guard, though. I mean, I know we're positionless, but like that's where they have Herb Jones slotted, at least in the rotation.
Yeah, but I mean,
as far as like he's not a point guard per se.
He's not. No, not at all. He's not even really a shooting guard. You can make the argument that he's going to defend all those roles, but offensively, he's not playing those positions. But
you can make him more of a wing guy, and then you can start 2 of those guard plays.
Yeah.
Just going real fast here. Going to Pistons. How you feel?
I mean, so I'm going to be selfish on this one because what I had, well, no, actually, let's change this. Is Jaden Ivey going to be a part of the Pistons' future? I think that's
a really good question.
I'm going to be watching Asar Thompson, like just glued on him.
Oh, but absolutely.
The thing that I think is really going to be interesting because I'm not as worried about Jalen Duren, even though it doesn't look like either of these guys, were going to make the cutoff to get signed on their rookie scales. But Ivey, I'm interested to see what the plan is there.
Yeah. You kind of broke my brain earlier with the Lauri Markkanen thing. I've been thinking about it pretty much ever since then. So I'm just gonna borrow that. Like if the Pistons end up being like the team that trades for Lauri Markkanen and what that means for the rest of the East, because he makes that team just lethal, especially if they do this trade earlier rather than later. Like the more time they have to kind of assimilate him into what their offensive and defensive schemes. You put him next to a center like Duren with a point guard the size of Cade and, all the other pieces that they have around him. And that's just a really tough, fierce team.
Quick side note, Cade might be top 5 in the league in scoring this year. Holy crap, has he looked awesome in preseason.
That's exciting. I mean, dude, I'm ready for his next leap and what he becomes next. So that kind of makes me think that him and Ivy maybe not the pairing for the future as we once thought.
It's really going to come down. Ivy shot the ball pretty well as a catch and shoot player last season versus what he was before. If he can prove to do that and then maybe drive the second unit stuff, then there might still be a hope there. It's just tough. They got a lot of mouths to feed, both literally and financially. And that's, if it comes down to Ivy or Duren, Ivy has more redundancy than Duren does for what you want to be going forward.
Yep, I completely agree. I think it's you, buddy. You're up.
Well, let's see. What do we have left here? We might as well go ahead and talk about Denver because I'm actually not that excited about what their conversations are going to be during the regular season.
Yeah, I really don't like my question about them is like, well, not question, it's just my comment about them, I guess, is just, how it looks with Michael Porter Jr. being gone. And, like, does the offense still remain as seamless because they've had the most consistent starting five of any team in the NBA for the last several seasons, which is very rare to have. They had uh, Murray, KCP, Brown, and then they go MPJ, Aaron Gordon, Jokic. And
Yeah.
now they're slotting somebody new in there. He's got to learn how to, it's a blessing, it's a gift and a curse to play alongside somebody like Nikola Jokic. Just basically, how does he slot in? How does he play with the other guys who have championship experience? Because I mean, he's been to one NBA Finals. That was, it's going to be 5 years ago, coming up on 5 years ago that happened. And, these guys have an expectation. He goes from playing in Brooklyn to playing in Denver, where they have high championship aspirations. And he is a central key part of that. So that's my big question. I mean, this team is built for the postseason. I'm not going to worry about anything they do in the regular season. Other than, I mean, you can make it be like, what does David Adelman like? What does his coaching style look like in his first full year with the Nuggets? Other than that,
Well,
what else is there to say?
I think tethered kind of to that is just going to be the interest of how hard do they push on the gas during the regular season. Like, do they want this to feel like a definitional year for the Nuggets because it's a new group? I mean, it's a new group across the board, right? Like, it's really going to be the first new run with their coach, with their new GM, whose name I think is Bob Tenzer, if I remember correctly, Adelman, and then this team. Do they really kind of like try to put their foot on the throat, or do they realize, as we've talked about the last couple of years, we might have gassed out? Now they've got a lot more depth. So I'm just interested because this could. The reason people are so high on Denver is Jokic never gets hurt. This team is really deep. This could all of a sudden look like a group that does win 60 games. So I'm just,
Yeah,
where is that? Where do they want to rest upon kind of that it's not a razor's edge, but it is a balance that's difficult to manage with a team that's a little bit older, but they're not old. Just in
I've got a.
terms of how hard
Oh,
do
I'm
we
sorry.
want to go? No, it's just how hard do they want to go?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were
No.
finishing up. But I do have a friend. He follows the Nuggets, and he has some well placed, people in the know. And he said that the Nuggets, like their feeling about like getting the number one overall seed is that it's not all that important. They that they truly believe they could have beat Oklahoma City last year, even on the road in Game 7, if they like were fully healthy. If like Porter Jr. wasn't hurt, and I think Gordon had the bad leg in that game, and the calf injury, I think it was what it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically that they don't put a ton of emphasis on having the best record. They just want to get to the playoffs. And maybe seeding matters to them, but I honestly don't think that even matters. I think that they just think that they can compete, especially with this team, the pivot they made and the way they restocked the bench, the way that you were talking about, that they're not worried. So that's just what I've heard.
Yeah.
Number one overall seed is not important to them.
Now that's
Um,
easy to say. Let's see what David Adelman feels in his
yeah,
first year as the
I'll
coach.
say
Yeah.
exactly. That's a very good
And,
point.
and what kind of start they get out to. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Hawks, baby.
I mean, can Trae Young be a top 15 player? To me, is the thing that like the distinction of what I think the Hawk, for people that are as high as some are on the Hawks, Trae Young has to play at a level where he's efficient and really moving the ball. And he's not a top 15 player year by year, but with this group and kind of in a contract year and everything else, can we see him scale up to that type of version for a year?
Yeah, my thing with the Hawks is I think we finally reached the point where this are the kind of players that the GM and the coaching staff that they wanted to kind of implement um, his vision, his coaching style. I think we're seeing the team take shape. And I guess my question is like when Quinn Snyder finally has a team that kind of fits his vision and the personnel that kind of matches up with what he wants to do, being so switchable, being so versatile. What does the Quinn Snyder version of this Atlanta Hawks team look like? Because I think that this is the first year where we're really going to see Quinn Snyder put his fingerprints on this squad. So that was the most interesting thing to me is how Quinn Snyder kind of does with all the new toys that he has because this team is demonstrably better.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And, Jalen Johnson and Zachary Risache and those guys taking jumps and all the rest of it should be exciting.
Absolutely. All right, man. We're getting to the nitty gritty. I think we're down to our last 5 here. So hit me.
Let's talk about the Los Angeles Lakers.
Lakers. All right. So we have LeBron missing the first 8 to 12 games with his sciatica, his back problem. I think they're going to be very cautious with him. So I think the most exciting thing to me is what does the Luka leading version of the Lakers look like with a team that is starting to be built around him? And I think that JJ and Rob Pelinka and everybody else in the front office, they're preparing for a post LeBron world. So now in those first 8 to 12 games, which I don't think are going to matter ultimately as far as like the record or what kind of team LA is going to be for the entire season, I think it gives us a glimpse into what their future is once LeBron finally calls it quits. So for me, that's what I'm most interested in seeing is like what does the Luka Lakers version look like?
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty comparable variation, which is like, what does LeBron's role look like on a Luka-led Lakers? I'm interested to see. This is really going to be the first time you can make an argument when Dwayne Wade, kind of in that 12 range, may have been as good or even obviously I wouldn't say considered better, but that was like right at that point, when he got there, that 2011, 2012, even though Braun was having crazy seasons. This is really going to be the first time that I think that we're really seeing a situation. Braun gave a lot of lip service to Anthony Davis being the guy, but this is the first time we're going to see somebody else with the ball in their hands to the type of level and have clearly defined that. We saw it last year, and it was a lot of fun to see, but what's it look like for a full season of how LeBron plays in a complementary role as still a phenomenal player?
Yeah. I mean, whenever LeBron says this is the guy, is when I don't believe it. Because whenever he does it, it's whenever he hasn't said it with like the Dwayne Wade teams that you're talking about. When he didn't say that like, hey, we're 1A and 1B. We're like neck and neck. I don't think he wanted that to be the case back then because, I think he wanted to kind of be the man in Miami. Not like to the point where it was like dismissive or detrimental to Dwayne Wade because it was always going to be Dwayne Wade's team. He was the homegrown guy. He already brought a championship there. But I think he wanted to be seen as like the move that he made was not like a sucker move, that he went there as like,
yeah,
to be the guy. So yeah,
and to be a great teammate in this group of superstars and all those other things, which I think there was some truth to that. But I mean, it wasn't the truth.
But I also believe it was super detrimental to LeBron to see kind of being the number one guy to somebody else. He was like, hey, I'm just one of 3 guys. It's me, it's Chris, it's Dwayne. The Miami team really took off whenever it was like, yeah, I'm LeBron James. And then I've got Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh as my wingmen that are kind of following up behind me. But like he tried to be too egalitarian and tried to make it too much like that. And now it's a good question of what it looks like because he hasn't had to do that in over a decade. And, he played with Anthony Davis. He played with Kyrie Irving, but he didn't play with like 3 guys who could really handle the offensive, at least the offensive workload like this. He's not going to be asked to score as much. So like, what does that mean for him whenever he's not having, to put up 25, 5 and 5? Is he going to be like a 19, 8 rebounds and 8 assists. Is that the new role that LeBron James takes on when he comes back?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good
So,
question.
and you made a good point too, where it's, even though I was using kind of the dichotomous version of it, that Austin Reeves' ability as a playmaker, and with the player as a ball, and again, like it's not totally fair because we did see this with LeBron in the second half of the year and more of
Sure.
that. But I think to me, it's like having a full offseason where we all clearly know where he is sort of in the pecking order. Not to insinuate that he's below Austin Reeves, but just
No.
JJ has an opportunity to kind of play him in these more things, and it's not them figuring out on the fly. It's now we actually have a planned cohesive attack for what this looks like and what does LeBron's version of that. And look, LeBron's been the complementary, it's kind of not the right way to say it, but he's when he was with the playing in the Olympics, we see a version of him that is off ball and is doing all these other things. And that's also what's exciting about a player that's so dynamic as him is just like, so what are the other ways that you impact the game? And he's still obviously
Absolutely.
very capable of doing that in all these fun ways, being a screener, a roller, being a guy that's, drawing
Working in the
attention,
post.
cutting through the lane, all that stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that,
Also, somebody brought up the fact that we're going to get a completely different emotional version of Luka this year, which is very fascinating. Basically, saying that when he came over, he was still shell shocked from the trade from Dallas, and going through the emotional turmoil of leaving that team, leaving that city. I don't know how much weight you put on, like how much that affected him, but apparently it was pretty substantial. But he was
yeah,
still
I
like
mean,
an
it's an
emotional wreck
interesting
about it.
point. I mean, I think Luca on the
Yeah,
floor kind of
it's a different person.
we know who he is. Like I don't think I'm
Yeah.
going to see that much of a difference, but
Yeah, we'll see.
it's still you and I talked about it when the trade was made, in real time that emotional element was not given enough consideration when you talk about the impact of
It's
the
a big
trade.
thing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it shows itself in a million different ways that some were aware of and many were not, right?
It's like after a
Yeah, it's a
bad
good point.
breakup, you go to the gym and you get hot. So
Yeah.
that's what Luca did. His one got hot.
Well, we definitely called that one.
Yeah, we all knew that was coming.
Yeah.
Cleveland Cavaliers, sir. Hit me
I
with
mean,
your
look, is this a championship level team or not? And I don't want to talk about it after this year. Like, I want to know or not know, but I don't want or I mean, I want to know.
yes.
I don't know. We haven't known but if you can't, it's past the second round, but it's also past the second round at a high
Right.
level.
Um, I'm going to borrow this from my friend Austin Fallon, huge Cleveland Cavaliers fan. He's from Ohio. He loves the Buckeyes, he loves the Guardians, and he loves the Cavs. And he said to me earlier tonight, I just want to see them get out of the second round and knock off this uh, the idea that they're soft, that they're chokers, that they're not built for the big one. That was his answer about what he wants to see from the Cavs, and I'm just going to take that from a Cavs fan and just call that gospel.
Yeah.
All right, we got two more.
San Antonio Spurs.
The Spurs. So this one's about the coach, about Micah Johnson. Mitch, sorry, that's my fault. Mitch Johnson. It's late. It is past midnight on the East Coast. I'm getting delirious. Mitch Johnson. Basically, what's his playbook look like without Coach Popovich? We talked a lot about the first full year of Luka and some of these other guys. It's their first full year with their new team. Well, this is his first full year because he took over for Popovich under some very hard circumstances. They make this big dramatic trade that lasts all of about 2 seconds before De'Aaron Fox gets hurt. Wemby gets shut down with his deep vein thrombosis. So now this is a team with a little bit more expectation. People are really high on them. The betting odds are starting to shift towards like the over. I think their win total has been going up throughout the preseason, throughout the offseason. So what does Mitch Johnson do with this team that's kind of the roster's a little bit on the in between, some veteran guys, a lot of young guys. What does his playbook look like? How does he maximize Wembanyama? How does he get these other guys to gel? How does he bring these rookies along? This team is, they want to compete sooner rather than later, and I think that this is their first step towards it. Can he win 45 games? Can he win 48. It's a very important question because they're really rolling the dice with this, generational player with a coach that's very unproven.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're rolling the dice in some ways because obviously you're looking
He's
at
a
somebody else. He's a Pop disciple, right? And more
Sure.
importantly, there is nothing that's happening in San Antonio that's not being exceptionally vetted through Wemby, who more importantly, I think is a player that his like Wemby's status in the league is going to be my thing, and it's not like a question. It's just like, where does he finish this year? Like, is he going to be considered a top 4 player in the league? Because I fully expect him to enter the top 5 conversation, but can he have the type of year that is so dominant on one? Because the thing that's going to be wild about Wemby is like, what does he have to get to offensively that's already going to meet the defensive thing? We go into this season all expecting him to not only be the best defensive player, but by a significant margin. So if he
Yeah.
averages, what is 24 a game enough? 25 a game?
No, that's more than enough.
And his
Jesus.
awareness of all of those things and how he's tried to develop himself and all that, I find to be incredibly interesting with Wemby. And I think this is going to be a year where he starts to really make it his league. And I think Mitch Johnson gets to have his wagon hitched to that and understands that thoroughly. And because of how Pop was trying to build around Wemby, the way the organization's trying to build around Wemby, I think Mitch Johnson too. Now, that doesn't change any of your questions with him. I'm just also saying Wemby is going to provide, obviously, so much um, uh, shine on this year's experience by who he is that will help the perceptions of Mitch Johnson, to be honest. And that's not to say anything about his coaching abilities, just the benefit of being able to have players like that. Like
Yeah.
sometimes the greatest thing you can do as a coach is let the players be phenomenal. Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, some people see that as a gift. You get to walk into such a talented team, but when there's actual expectations, it can sometimes, like I said, be like a curse. So that's what I'm just kind of curious. I have no doubts that like RC Buford and everybody else that's in the Spurs front office, that they don't know Mitch Johnson like backwards and forwards. They're very aware of who this person is that they hired for this team. They obviously wouldn't entrust him, but it's a matter of like saying that out loud and then actually proving it on the floor.
yeah,
So he's going to have to go out there and prove it. If this team stumbles, it's the same way with that, Miami Heat team that we were just talking about in 2011. There were people calling for Eric Spoelstra to get fired when they were like 10 and 15.
yeah,
It's like, it's not fair. He needs a little bit of time. And it's even worse now with like the instant reactions that everybody has online,
yeah,
how fast that criticism can come. And I'm sure he's built for it. And the Spurs are not a reactionary team. They're not going to, pull the plug on him after 25 games or anything like that. I don't believe that at all. But there is going to be a considerable amount of pressure just for a head coach walking into such a legendary situation with amazing roster.
yeah.
We got two more. Got the Knicks for you. Hit me.
Um, what happens if this team bombs? Like, what happens to the Knicks? This is more kind of just an interesting question because I think we kind of all know the other stuff. It's like, oh, what's the Mike Brown? But with the burden of expectation they have, if they underplay significantly, what is the response of that media market, that collection of players, everything? Because there's a lot of stuff to me between OG Anunoby's health. Cat's health has been an issue plenty of times. There are
Mitchell
enough things
Robinson's.
there that can displace this whole season in a way that I'm just interested to see what the reaction to that could be. And I'm not wishing the Knicks any ill will. I had them in the conference finals. Like I want that to be the season, but I'm interested to see how that could go.
I think it makes the idea of trading for Giannis very real. And I don't think there's any depths to which if this team flames out early or doesn't quite live up to at least a conference finals expectation, if not the finals outright, I don't think there's any depth to which Leon Rose would not go in order to leverage the future to make a win now play, because every move he's made in the last two seasons is a win now move, even if you didn't love it necessarily off the rip, like trading for Cat, trading for OG, how much they gave up to get Mikal Bridges, the money they set aside that Jalen Brunson saved them. These are all moves that were made with a championship in mind, not in 2 years, not in 5, now. And I think now the runway could not be more clear for them to find it. So anything short of a conference finals berth, I think it's an unmitigated disaster for the Leon Rose and his regime.
Yeah, so I mean, we're kind of cutting along that same path where that's what I'm just interested in is, especially with how, aggressive they've shown themselves to be. I think Jalen Brunson is the only untouchable piece because of the family dynamic there with him and Leon Rose and all that. But
I think he's the only untouchable player on that team. But
and the contract, right? Hey, look,
I mean,
we get a top 10 player who's getting paid like a top 40 player. Not only is he untouchable because he's been so amazing to this area, like that is phenomenal value that you can't recoup in a deal.
No, you're exactly right. The final team, we don't even have to talk about it, is the NBA champion, Oklahoma City Thunder. Do you have anything you want to touch on about this team before I touch on mine?
Can the Thunder for me, it's easy. It's just, does this want to be a team that goes on a Warriors type of run where, Tim Bontemps for ESPN, I believe, was the person that I heard make this comp, but it was like, the Warriors in 16, right, in 15, won 60 something games. And in 16, they came out, we didn't think they can make another step and they end up winning 73 games. Is that what this Thunder team can do?
Basically it's the question here is like, I think the only real question that this team has for this season is, can they repeat that process that got them to a championship the first time? Can they replicate the kind of defense they had? Can they, they didn't have as much health luck last year. They had a lot of injuries to a lot of different players. But they've got a bunch of guys that you could, somewhat call injury prone. That they've had some, this and that have kept him, like Alex Caruso miss a ton of games. He's 31 or 32, and he just got a 5-year extension, I believe, or a 4-year extension. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Chet Holmgren, with his injury, I mean, I know the first year doesn't really count because they don't call that his rookie year, but he missed an entire season. Then he played 90 something or 92 games, and then he broke his hip. So, can he stay healthy? Isaiah Hartenstein, he missed a few games. So, can they replicate the process by which they won a championship last year now that everybody is gearing up to beat them and they have the target on their backs? So, some of the young guys are going to have to come along. I think Cason Wallace is going to have an increased role. I think you'll see guys like AJ Mitchell and Topic and some of the other guard play because
Topic also got hurt.
Testicular.
Yeah,
you usually don't. You don't hear that one.
What was it? Out 6 weeks with testicular surgery, something like that. Well, that's
not sort usually... of testicular surgery, some sort of torsion, or what the hell? Well, I was gonna say, but
I didn't click the link. I wasn't that. He lost me at testicular.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, that I was going to be interested. My thing for this team was going to be Thomas Sorber and how he looked as a replacement for Isaiah Hartenstein, and he's out for the entire year. So that was the only real question. The real question they have is depth at the front court behind Chet Holmgren, behind Isaiah Hartenstein. They have Jalen Williams. They have Brandon Carlson, kind of an interesting 7-foot center who can shoot, stretch the floor a little bit more. But
Utah's finest.
Utah's finest. He looks it, looks every part.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I had for the Thunder as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's them all.
Yeah, we covered all 30 teams in about an
We made
hour and
it.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
That's pretty good if you think about it. That's 105 minutes. It means we spent an average of 3 minutes talking about every team before the NBA season starts. I just think that's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, that's not. Is that? Yeah, that's not
For
bad. You're
us,
right.
for us, it's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty good. It was. Yeah. It's. Yeah. I'll take it.
Hey, it's late at night. It's 12:20.
We're
We made it.
loopy.
We're loopy. We made it through the
Yeah.
podcast. I'm very proud of us. I'm glad that we got this in. Thank you for taking time out of your trip to San Francisco to record this podcast.
Of course. I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
I am gonna bring my laptop and my just in case to Oklahoma in case we have any time and maybe some breaking news happens and you and
Yeah.
I need to do a quick little something. I'm bringing my laptop to Oklahoma, but otherwise I will be at Oktoberfest and hanging out with friends and trying to enjoy a few days off, which sounds incredibly lovely. I'm very excited about it.
Have yourself a
Anything
good time, sir.
I appreciate that. Is there anything you want to push, plug, or just announce before we get out of here?
God willing, I get this top 100 done before the season starts. But
I believe in you.
besides that, no. This will go up probably Thursday morning. So excited to get that out there, and that's the basketball has. One of the things I realized is going from the NBA to the WNBA, right back into the NBA. Get a little bit of whiplash. Like,
A little bit. I mean,
yeah,
you haven't even gotten a chance to celebrate your championship yet.
yeah. The basketball doesn't sleep.
No, it does not. Ball don't stop. It never
Live,
does.
breathe, ball. All those
Live,
things.
breathe, and ball, as some people have commonly coined. I will say I'm very excited to discuss the NBA. This will be our first full season as podcast partners. So we're going to come up with some new ideas for podcasts. And we hope that all of you who listen to this podcast throughout the off season and through the WNBA season, that you stick with us through this upcoming 25-26 season. We always appreciate your engagement, the fact that you guys listen, the fact that you make it worth it for us to do this. So thank you all so much for that. Like, subscribe, follow, rate, do all the things that you do. It's very important to us. It helps get our podcasts out there. It helps get our name out there. And Aaron, if you don't have anything else,
that's it.
We're going to end this podcast the way that we always do by saying adios.